Welcome to A League of Our Own, smart talk for women from the women of WRHU, where we provide a forum for the issues important to women. I'm Eli Finkelson, and I'm joined today by Jennifer McConnell, Sarah Thissell, and Karen Richardson, strong, hard-working single moms. Jen, I'd love to start with you. If you could just tell us the story of how you became a single mom, of course, as much or as little as you're willing to share.
Sure. Well, I suppose like all single moms, I was married and had a baby and then was not married anymore. My daughter was 3 at the time, and we went from living in an 1,800 square foot house to about a 700 square foot apartment. And that's where we were for about 8 years.
Can you tell me about the transition from going to married sort of nuclear family life to then being on your own?
The transition is multifold. There is the emotional transition of no longer having a day-to-day partner, someone who is another adulting with you in the house, feeding the baby, at this time a toddler, helping with picking up and dropping off from daycare, after that transportation to and from school, helping with homework and those things. And then there's the financial obligation. Even with child support, there are things that the custodial parent, the primary caregiver, has to cover that are never covered by child support. And I was not the primary breadwinner in my relationship, so my ex-husband made about 3 times as much as I did, but our incomes were not equal after the split. And of course, you've got 2 parents who are divorced, so 2 households to maintain financially. So those things have separate challenges.
And can you tell me about your recovery process, of course, emotionally, but also financially, going down to a single income household?
Well, emotionally, I felt I didn't have a choice. I had to be there for my daughter and raise her the best I could. I was very lucky in that my ex-husband and I made a commitment to each other and to our daughter that we would put differences aside as much as we could and be there for her and raise her together, be on the same page as parents. For the most part, we have been since then, and it's been 17, almost 18 years since our divorce. And right up until she graduated from high school, we were pretty much on the same page with her life and discipline and how she was being raised and the human we were working together to make her. That made the emotional transition as a parent much easier. The financial transition was different. I had to change jobs, work very, very hard to earn more money so that I could eventually buy a house on my own. When I was 40, I went back and paid my way through graduate school on my own so I could, again, further my career and make more money to help keep the household going and eventually send her to a good school.
And what about after the divorce? Once everything was stabilized, how did you find yourself thriving?
Well, some of it was pure determination and some of it was luck. My career stayed the same. It simply was elevated very quickly. I went from a minor, low on the totem pole position in a small business doing finance and accounting and some marketing to a director position in finance and operations. I got to know manufacturing very, very well. I went through several positions at different manufacturers and learned that industry very well and worked very hard. The luck part comes in where I worked for a gentleman who rewarded me very highly for the hard work that I did. Because I was in a small business, I worked directly for the president of the company. I wore many hats. I worked 6 days a week, sometimes 12 hours a day. And when the company was profitable, he shared that with me, which enabled me to have some advantages that other working moms might not have had.
Can you tell me how you balanced being a working mom, working hours like that?
Sure. Well, my ex-husband was part of that. He did have my daughter a couple of days a week. We lived very close to one another geographically. I also lived very close to my office, so I was able to take her to school, get to work very quickly, go into work at off hours. When she was with her dad on Saturdays every week, I was able to go to work. I could work from home when it snowed or when she was sick so that my work was not interrupted, but I could still take care of her. So there was some co-parenting and, again, some luck with a very understanding and supportive work environment.
What would you say that being a single mom did to your strength and your confidence?
It definitely made me stronger. I don't know if it always built my confidence. I would say now, being at the other end of it with a daughter who is in college and very successful and demonstrating some of the things I like to think she learned from me passively, of drive, determination, and a strong work ethic and being a good person. On the other end of it, I can say, yes, I am the person I am very much because I was a single mom and had these additional responsibilities. I don't know if I would be that much different had I not been a single mom. I don't know that I can look back and question that. But I'm definitely a strong person now, and I can't say it wasn't because I was a single mom.
Is there anything else that you think is important to mention about being a single mom and recovering and thriving from that?
What I would say is every situation is different, and no two situations are the same. I was lucky in several ways, not only with the relationship that I worked very hard to maintain with my ex-husband, my daughter's father. I was very lucky in some turns of my career, and I was lucky that I had opportunities to advance my career and eventually buy a home of my own. I could afford to put myself through graduate school. Not everybody has that luck, and not everyone has those advantages. It's hard. No matter what luck and advantages you have or don't have, it's hard to be a single mom and to feel as if you are giving your child your best. There are a lot of studies that show women, even in nuclear families, the mom carries the brunt of the emotional work as well as the housework and running errands and those sorts of things. When it's only you, that is exponentially larger a responsibility, and it can be overwhelming, and it's okay to be overwhelmed, and it's okay to take care of yourself sometimes. It's okay to reach out and ask for help. And it's okay to take advantage if you have opportunities. You should take them, and always know that whatever decision you make, you're going to probably question it in hindsight. But in the moment, if you're making the best decisions that you can, you're going to do okay. It'll be okay.
And then lastly, I know we kind of talked about this. You kind of mentioned this. Is there any last advice that you would give other single moms that are going through similar struggles?
The advice I would give is that you're always going to question your decisions, especially if you're the only one making those decisions. That's natural. It's normal. Even after you've made the decisions, you'll question yourself. Just do the best that you can for yourself, for your children. Again, every situation is different, and so long as you're doing your best, in the end, your best will be good enough. You just have to keep plowing forward.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for sharing. Sarah, I'd like to ask you the same set of questions next. Can we just start with your story again, as much or as little as you're willing to share?
My husband and I had 3 kids, and when my children were 7, 2, and 6 months, my husband, Jamie, was in a motorcycle accident and passed away. And so I became a single mom of 3.
And can you tell me what the transition was like, financially, emotionally for you at that time?
It was really difficult. It was because it was an accident. It was totally unexpected. he was the primary breadwinner. He was an emergency medicine physician. Luckily, I did have a job. I worked for a family company, and the good part was that I worked mostly from home, but would travel occasionally, and my in-laws were about 15 minutes away, so I could leave them and know that they were well taken care of, even though as a single mom, I didn't have my husband at home to help take care of them. We were both, he was 35 and I was almost 35, and we had gotten life insurance, and we had considered getting rid of a big portion of the life insurance, but the day before he died, we actually decided not to get rid of it, which was we didn't know how good a decision that would be. And that helped because it gave us a cushion. What I did was I put the life insurance into an annuity so that I would know that I was getting some money every month, in addition to my pay, so that we could pay the bills and we didn't have to move, which would have been another major change for the children. So we were able to keep the house.
And what was the transition like for the children?
My oldest daughter, Rebecca, had just turned 7, and it was the most difficult for her because the other two were so young that they didn't really know what was going on. He dropped her. She was at a small private school at the time. He dropped her off the day he died, and we decided that it was best for her to move schools. So for the next year, we switched her school. I don't know how I would have done it without my in-laws, because especially my mother-in-law, I'm very close to her and always have been, and she would take the kids somewhere if I had to be one place, and she could take another child somewhere. She took the kids whenever I was gone. She helped out whenever I needed help. My mother passed away, had passed away before that. My father had been in an accident and is a paraplegic, so he could not help. But I don't think I could have done it without my in-laws.
And how did you balance being a full-time single parent with also working, with also trying to maintain a healthy social life?
I wouldn't say I necessarily balanced it that well. But what I ended up putting aside was my personal. I pretty much gave everything to the kids, and then work. Luckily for me, my work was not a full-time. I didn't have to be away full-time, and because I could do things from home, if one of the kids was sick or there was a snow day, I could still be there for them, and that was very helpful. It was the hardest part about working was when I would have to leave, especially early on. Every time I would leave, my oldest, Becca, would be terrified that I would not come back. So it was that was probably the most difficult part of balancing the work portion. I didn't, and I still don't really go out by myself, but I love being with my children. My children are older now, and we do pretty much everything together. And I occasionally will go out, but they enjoy a lot of the same things I do. We go to concerts together and Broadway shows, and we travel together. And I think that we would have been close anyway, but we are extremely close as a family. And it's wonderful to see how the kids have grown, and they rarely fight. They'll argue a little bit, but it really, I think that we all know how lucky we are to have each other.
And then bringing it back to you and your personal recovery, what would you say that being a single mom did to your strength and your confidence?
I don't know if it really did anything to my confidence. I guess that I had to learn how to do things that I would not have necessarily done before, that Jamie would have just done. I guess one example is when we bought our house, we bought a small generator that would run the pump and the heat, and it would run the refrigerator, and then there was one other outlet so that you could plug in a phone or whatever. And every year Jamie would get it out, make sure it was working, and we never had to use it. And then the year he died, that December, there was a huge ice and snowstorm. We lost power for about 2 weeks. And so I was home with a 7-year-old, a 2-year, he had turned 3 by that point, and the baby had turned 1. And I had to figure out how to use it, how to set it all up, bring it out, and I pretty quickly learned how to do it and could pretty much do it blindfolded. But before that, I would have just sent him out to do it. So in some ways, I guess I realized I could do it. And I actually, the day he died, earlier that day, we were watching a TV show together, and the husband of one of the characters passed away, and I was thinking I could never do that. I could never be able to handle that, and I didn't realize that I would very quickly have to. And you just learn that you do what you have to do, and even if you think you can't, you don't have a choice.
And is there any advice that you would give to any single moms that are going through similar situations to yours?
I guess take help when other people, and ask for help, because I very much hated feeling like I was a burden to anybody. And I know that there were a lot of people who wanted to help me. And first of all, I didn't know what I needed because I was so overwhelmed, but I didn't want to bother people. So there were things that I should have asked people for more help, and I know that they would have gladly given it to me, but I didn't. And I think that made it more difficult. And also realize that you can't do everything. There are things that I know my kids missed out on, or I didn't do as well as I could have, but I also was doing the best I could, and I think that, in the grand scheme of things, I survived, and my children are doing really well, and that's the important thing. But there are things that I wish that we could have done, that I could have done differently, but I probably would have done the same thing going back. If in the same situation, I probably would have done the same thing.
Absolutely. And is there anything else that you want to add, either about your time as a single mom or that you want to add about single motherhood in general?
I think that the important thing is just to realize that you can do it, no matter how hard it is, but to also give yourself grace, I guess, and realize that it's okay if your kids drive you crazy. It's okay if you sometimes wish you didn't have children, if you sometimes think that you're a failure. It's okay to feel those things, and it doesn't mean you are, but that you will, it's just take it hour by hour if you have to, if you can't deal with day by day. and realize that you're going to get through it one way or the other. And I guess appreciate the things that you do have, but allow yourself to grieve for not, you don't have necessarily the perfect family. And also realize that most people don't. Just because you see the two-parent family with all the pictures on Facebook or something, they aren't necessarily as happy as they seem to be. And so realize that everybody has their own struggles, and nobody's life is as perfect as they might want you to think.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your unbelievable story. I absolutely cannot even imagine what it must be like to lose a spouse like that. Karen, can we go to you now? And can you just tell us your unique story about how you became a single mom? Of course, as much or as little as you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. I was married, and, I definitely had the biggest role in taking care of my kids. And when my youngest was around 2, my husband started drinking a lot and taking a lot of drugs. And this went on for 5 or 6 years, and he eventually got so bad where I just had to leave him. And so he moved away, and he never visited the kids. He didn't pay child support. He hasn't seen them in 5 years. I haven't seen any money. And so basically from 5 years ago on, and my youngest is now 12, I have been a single parent.
And can you tell me about the transition going from being a part of a larger family to becoming a single mom?
Well, because I was always I was the main caregiver, and my husband had lost his job before I kicked him out. It was kind of a gradual change into that, so it wasn't as shocking as, I can imagine other people having. So it was pretty gradual, I would say.
Can you tell me about how you coped with the financial transition from having to support 4 people with 2 incomes to then having to support 3 people with only 1?
Well, one of my daughters is much older than the youngest one, so she would help me out with, the after school thing. My parents helped me out. So without them, there's no way that I could have kept the job that I had, which, I'm an accountant and I have to work tax season and all that. So that was a little challenging. And, my kids would cry a lot, and I would feel really bad because I wasn't around a lot because I had to make money. So there's that. But like the chores and like trying to spend time with them, that didn't change that much, but it was definitely the money aspect that was the hardest.
So can you tell me about how you recovered?
I think because I had so much help from my older daughter and my parents with, driving the kids places and watching them after work, it allowed me to keep progressing in my career, which obviously came with more money as well. So that was a huge help. I do not think that I would be where I'm at without the help that I had. So I really do think it was just having, your family support or friends or whatever to kind of take over that thing so you're allowed to, be successful at work. You are it. So not only do my kids only have me, but now they have this issue an abandonment issue. So, one of their parents left them, which I can't imagine. And so every time I think about that, I have to make an extra effort to be the strong one, not be scared, not, shy away from things, and even do things that are uncomfortable for me to show them that they need to do these things too. There's some benefits for being a single parent too. I mean, you get to control the whole situation. You don't have to argue with another person about how you think things should be done. But yeah, I think it makes you stronger in the way that you just have to get things done. You don't have the option.
Can you talk about what being a single mom did to your confidence?
When I think about what it was like when I was married, and yeah, I did a lot, and that's great. But when you're a single mom and you're also successful in your career and your kids are doing, they're doing fine and they're happy, that that makes me really proud of myself that, through all of that, through, abandonment, drug issues, all of that, they're okay. And, I'm okay too. And yeah, I can't tell you how strong that makes me feel.
And then lastly, what advice would you give to other single moms who were going through similar struggles that you did?
I think, number one, do not be afraid to ask for help because you're going to need it. And you're still a strong person, even if you need help. Number two, while it seems really awful at the beginning and like you think you can't do it, as long as you realize that you kind of have to do it because this is all your kids have, it will get easier. Just keep going and eventually everybody kind of, like I said, settles in, you settle in, and it's really amazing how people can adapt to difficult situations. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Karen, for sharing your story with me. According to the 2018 U.S. Census Bureau, about 11 million single-parent families exist in the United States, and of that, more than 80% of those households are headed by single mothers. These three women are among those 11 million families. And again, thank you so much, all three of you, Jen, Sarah, and Karen, for speaking with me today. And thank you for listening to A League of Our Own, smart talk for women from the women of WRHU. And let us know what you think. Email us at programming@wrhu.org. And you're listening to 88.7 FM Radio Hofstra University or online at wrhu.org.